right? So it can be a pretty broad goal, like I want to be healthier in 2026, or it can be a narrower goal. I want to specifically improve my energy levels and focus. So when we do the audit, we'll have you come up with your own goal. Um, so the goal then feeds into the habit audit. And what the habit audit basically does, it examines all of your existing habits that are in service of this goal, right? And we ask ourselves the question, does a habit need to be added, edited, or deleted? And more on that soon. And then the output of the habit audit becomes your habit system, which is your collection of habits that fuel um, your path towards your goals. So I hope that makes sense so far. So the most probably important piece of the puzzle here is this habit audit, and this is what we're going to get you started on today. So the way to think about a habit audit is to ask yourself two simple questions is, what am I doing on repeat? And is it helping me or is it hurting me? Right? In terms of the service of the goal. So I'll take us through this full example here first, and then we'll break for 4 minutes and we'll have you work up your own initial draft of your own habit audit. So the simple example here is Jenny. And basically, Jenny says she wants to improve her energy levels and focus specifically, right? So the first part of the audit is what we call notice, and it's part of a three-step loop here. So Jenny starts examining her habits over the last 24 hours. She wakes up, she checks her phone in bed. Um, Mid-morning, she has coffee and a snack. Afternoon, she experiences a slump and she avoids her work. And then the evening, she's finding herself scrolling late and watching some Netflix. So this is sort of think of it like the surfacing of the habits initially. The next piece of the puzzle is to actually label them. So you go through the habits and you basically ask the question, is it helping me? Is it neutral or is it hurting me? Phone in bed, she decides it's hurting her because she thinks it's impacting her energy level. Coffee and a snack, neutral. Avoiding her work, definitely hurting her. Late night scrolling, definitely hurting her. So that's step two. So then step three is the decision step here, which is basically what called add, edit, or delete. So looking across these habits. Phone in bed, she decides she needs to delete. 10-minute walk during the afternoon slump, she's going to add one of them in so that it gives her a little bit more energy. And she needs to edit her wind down. Instead of lights out at midnight, she wants to roll back to 11:30, right? So you get the idea here. So in terms of the workshop here, um, what we want you to do here is to do a couple of things. Start with some desired goal, which is basically the input to your habit audit. Pick whatever it is, whatever relevant to you. And then after that, spend a few minutes coming up with some initial habits. So you want to notice them, and you can look at this within the context of the last 24 hours. So just do that. Try and come up with 3 or 4 habits. Notice, and then label them. Is it helping me, hurting me, or is it neutral? And then make your decision on whether you feel like you need to add something new, edit an existing one, or delete one of the habits. So I'll come back in about 3 minutes to give you the 1 minute countdown. All right. So take some time to do that as part of the workshop now. Thank you. Hey, Svetlana, I think you just joined here. We're in the middle of the first workshop piece here. I'll give you a quick 10-second summary or so. Basically, the workshop here involves you picking a goal and then examining the habits that you currently have in place to service the goal through this lens of notice, label, and decide. And you can follow the example here of Jenny here, who wants to improve her energy levels and focus. And then these are her habits here that she notices. Then she labels them in terms of helping, neutral, or hurting. And then the third point here, she makes a decision based off of, does she feel like they're in service of her or not? Does she need to delete, add a new habit, or edit? We'll be returning in about 2 minutes to just pick up. We will return in 1 minute and pick up. Okay, great. So at this point, you should have essentially your first pass at a very quick audit here. You should have a goal defined, should have a few habits laid out, i.e. notice. You should have labeled them helping, neutral, or hurting. And then you should have gone through the process of asking yourself, do they need to be deleted, edited, or do I need to add something new? Right? So basically the next piece of the puzzle here is how do we, if we've identified we need to add a new habit, what's the easiest way to add a new habit? Because they can be tricky, as we know. So there are several core components to habit building. And basically, the first component is what we call the cue or trigger. This is the prompt to start the habit, i.e., do it now. And I'll talk about this within the context of a new habit here of Jenny wanting to jog 3 times per week. So her cue in this case is to leave her running gear and running shoes at the foot of the bed. So it's a visual cue that when she gets up, she go, oh yeah, I have to run today. The action or behavior is the act of running, 20-minute jog. And then the reward is the positive experience that she benefits from by having the habit in place. In this case, the runner's high. It's critical that a new habit has all of these three components for it to um, kick in and set over time. If you eliminate one of these components, it usually doesn't work. So you're basically training the new habit this way. The fourth piece of the puzzle is repetition. So habits typically in the beginning, they live in the conscious mind. The repetition is what pushes them into the subconscious mind. And that's why over time they feel easier, right? Because there's less friction. So it's a great idea to think about setting a goal of 5 repetitions initially. But some data here in terms of some of the research says that it takes about 8 to 30 for it to feel less effortful, 30 to 60 for it to feel familiar, and 60 to 90 for it to feel automatic. So it's really important to think about these 4 elements as you're designing or engineering your new habits. So a couple of hacks, let's call them, in terms of forming a new habit. There's a concept called habit stacking, which is basically using one existing habit to trigger a new one. So let's say you've coffee at 8 a.m. in the morning, you want to have a 8 a.m. meditation, right? You can leverage the 8 a.m. coffee to trigger the meditation, and it lowers the friction. And similarly with working out with headphones, if you start listening to the music, that can be a trigger for your workout. So it's sort of this idea of after I do X, I do Y. You're essentially borrowing the wiring of the existing habit. So that's a really good one. A second one, which is extremely powerful at the beginning, is this idea of starting with a minimum viable habit. And that's basically lowering the activation energy. So let's say you want to jog for 20 minutes. If you start with 5 minutes, you've lowered the activation energy, right? 20 minutes may feel very intimidating. 5 minutes is like, no, that's totally fine. So basically, you're starting from a place. You try to start from a place where the mental resistance almost feels like zero, right? So then the next piece of the puzzle is dismantling a habit. So by way of an example, Jenny finds herself scrolling on the phone in bed instead of sleeping. She wants to dismantle that habit. So this is achieved using a similar three-step process. So there's this idea of removing the cue or trigger, right? So make the cue or trigger visible or invisible, or it also involves changing the environment, right? So typically Jenny's phone lives on her nightstand, but if she simply moves it into another room, she's removing the cue or trigger, right? So the second piece is increasing the friction. So if you add friction to the actual habit. In this case, Jenny's case, she decides that she's just going to start logging out of Instagram at 9 p.m., even before she moves into the room. That's an example of adding friction. And then the third piece of the puzzle is just re-examining the reward that she's getting from the existing habit. So if scrolling is giving her some form of relief here, perhaps there's other ways to find that, right? Okay, so maybe through the lens of like reading music, stretching or breathing, right? So I wanna break here for a minute probably or two. And if there's and I'm hoping there is one on your audit list, if there's something that you feel like you want to delete from your habit list, right? Let's give you a minute to think about ways that you can remove the trigger here. And you can use this example as inspiration, right? And then from there, let's think about ways that you can increase the friction around the habit that you want to remove. And then the third piece of the puzzle is just have a look at the reward that you think you're getting from that habit. And then ask yourself, is there another way for me to get that reward? Okay. So I'll pause here for a minute, probably or two, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about possible next steps. Okay. So before I talk about next step, I will just quickly summarize where we've come from because I know we've covered a lot here and a few people joined late. So we basically talked about this idea of habits being a fuel that sustain momentum towards goals in life. And if you don't have enough fuel or you run out of fuel, the rocket falls out of the sky, right? We looked at a few different definitions of what a habit is. The one that resonates the most with myself is this more practical one up here is it's a learned pattern that causes an action to happen with little conscious effort. We talked about the concept of a habit system, which is basically a collection of habits working in service of a goal here. And we talked about a way to define the habit system is to start with this idea of an audit. And basically, what the audit is it's examining what you've done on repeat for 24 hours, right? And then in service of the goal, right? And then asking yourself the question, is it helping me or is it hurting me? And then after that, deciding what you need to do with that habit. Do I need to get rid of it, delete? Do I need to edit it? Or do I need to add something new, right? And then we looked at habit formation and this very important concept of four core elements working together. Cue, action, reward, repetition. And then we talked about a few hacks here, habit stacking, which is using one existing habit to help fuel the new one, lowering the resistance. And then this other idea of the minimum viable habit. So basically, if you want to jog 20 minutes a day, just start with five. It helps lower the activation energy. We also talked about dismantling a habit and the three core elements, removing the cue, increasing friction, re-examining the reward. All right. So in terms of next steps here, my recommendation at this point, given the work you've done today, is to take the habit audit that you've done and expand it out to 7 days. So you have a draft, look at the habits in service of the goal over a 7 day period. You have an add, edit, delete draft today. Again, build it out to be more complete, right? And then that work should fuel into a habit system. Kind of think about it as a cleansed habit collection at that point in time. Use some of the habit formation tools I talked about, use some of the habit dismantling tools I talked about, and then use this system in service of your desired goal or outcome. So, lastly, I do offer one-to-one coaching if anyone wants any support in the space. Feel free to reach out. If you got something from today, please share with a friend. I think some of these tools are very powerful. I'm just trying to get them out to as many people. If you're interested in following me, I'm at Sensei on Instagram, TikTok. If you're interested in the slides here, just email me at the address below here, first name dot last name at Gmail. Um, and I will hang out now for 5 to 10 minutes if anyone has any questions. Give me 1 second though. I have to allow you to unmute yourselves. Okay. Okay. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask. Hey, how's it going? Good. Yeah. So you're talking about the next session that's not this session, not an actual habit building session, or because I repeat this habit building session once a week as well. So I have two other sessions. I have one on goal building, which is typically on Tuesday at 12 o'clock Eastern time. And then I'm launching one tomorrow on procrastination, and that's at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And then this one obviously sits today, Wednesday at 12. No, tomorrow is procrastination. Yeah. And Goal building will be next Tuesday at 12 Eastern. So if you go to my meetup page, you will be able to find a link there, no problem. Cool. Yeah, no problem at all. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions or if you want a copy of the deck, okay? Anybody got anything else? I will say too that I know there's a lot here. Feel free to come to this as many times as you want. I do have a lot of people who have come many, many times just because it's hard to take in everything. But I want to try and add as much value to the session as possible. That's why I try and include as much as I can. But by all means, come to this one over and over because sometimes the concepts take a bit of time, right?
Hey, Aiden. Hi.
Hey,
So I have a question. Is my question is how to leverage your strong habits.
could you repeat the question? You cut out a little
Oh,
bit.
yeah. How do you leverage strong habits? Like,
Yeah,
mhm.
gotcha. I think the answer to that question is you can kind of look at it a few different ways. The mission One of the missions of the audit is to get rid of habits that aren't serving you anymore, right? So I would say, in terms of strong habits, is try and get as many habits into the system that you feel are your strengths and that are serving you in a way to basically service the goal that you're chasing after here. And then secondly, if you see a habit that you're particularly good at, um, it's also good to look at things that might sit in parallel to that, that could go hand in hand with that habit that you could introduce as an ad in there. So, we're all good at different things, right? So if you see something that you're really good at and you can spin off a parallel habit that's not that habit, that's slightly different, but leverages those same skills, um, you're on a winning horse then. But the mission here of the habit system is to really make sure that the energy you're using on a daily basis is being deployed correctly and that you're not really wasting energy. Because sometimes some of these habits are neutral, right? They don't really give us anything, but we're still spending the time doing it. So why do it? And then some aren't serving us at all, like they're weakening us, right? Um, so they'd be ones you want to work at deleting. And then the outcome of that system is you have a very healthy habit system. Think of it almost like an engine purring, right? Um, but it takes a while to get there. All right. Anything else? Okay. Thank you so much for joining. Um, Patty, I know you and I are going to chat. Is now a good time to chat? And if so, can we jump over to the other Zoom link? Does that work for you now, or do you want to wait till one?
The session's 25, correct? 25 minutes. Or
Our,
wait.
se- yeah, our next session, our meeting will be about 30 minutes.
Oh,